Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Leung. I am the Director for Venture for Climate Tech, and I will be your facilitator today. We've got lots of goodies in store for all of you who are climate founders or aspiring to be climate founders. So a quick Zoom logistics thing, because today's a webinar and not like a normal meeting, you'll see that there was a chat function, but next to the chat function, you should also be able to see this thing called Q&A. So somewhere in your bar, it should say Q&A. That's actually where you should be putting any of your questions throughout today, if you have any. You'll see that Chris and Scott are off cam. They are on the V4C team, and they will be fielding these questions as we go along and saving some towards the end as well. But if you have questions, please use the Q&A function and not the chat function, as we may not be monitoring that one as closely. Okay, so let's see, nothing else logistics there. Okay, great. So jumping in again, as a small introduction to Venture for Climate Tech, I just wanted to let you know who we are and what we're here for. We're a nonprofit accelerator that helps we are a nonprofit accelerator that helps secure a brighter and more sustainable future by supporting a diverse set of founders with a coalition of investors, mentors, technical experts, all committed to catalyzing new climate tech solutions. It is a 6-month virtual program, and in each program, we are taking 20 pre-seed and seed stage startup, and each company is eligible for up to $50,000 in non-dilutive funding. Our applications just opened about 2 weeks ago for our 4th cohort, which will start this May. And my team can help throw a link in the chat for the application in case you're interested to check it out. And all of today's panelists are alumni of the program, so it's a great chance to hear where they are today with their businesses. So our panelists are also coming from a mix of backgrounds and industry backgrounds. So whether you're someone working out of your garage or in a lab, we hope that you'll be able to take away some great learnings from them and some next steps for your own journey. Okay. So that is my introduction. So let me now turn it over to our panelists. Hello, Minh, Aaron, Alex, and Giddy. Let's start with going around and have all of you take a minute and tell us these 3 things. What your company does, where you are based out of, and how long have you been working on your company? I will start with Alex.
Alex, CEO and co-founder of Cascade Biocatalysts, and we're cleaning up the chemicals industry with nature's catalyst enzymes. My co-founder invented a better technology to stabilize these amazing class of proteins, and we're commercializing it using enzymes anywhere from breaking down plastics to making specialty chemicals and processing food in a better way. My co-founder invented technology at CU Boulder, so we have a lab in Denver, but I live in Brooklyn. And we've been remote first now since in the 2 years we've known each other, starting the company about 13, 14 months ago.
Thank you. Let's go to Giddy.
Hey everyone, Giridhar Srinivasan. I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Infraclear, and we're really on a mission to go and democratize infrastructure data. And I spent about 15 years developing and financing infrastructure projects. And anyone who's ever worked on project financing or trying to go and develop or finance any kind of infrastructure project knows that at the heart of it are a set of really complicated legal agreements like loan agreements, power purchase agreements, concession agreements, and more. And financial models are also a very important part of understanding the structure of how these projects are put together. So we've gone and built a database, a data platform with thousands and thousands of project agreements, and we use AI to extract data from that. So you have millions of standardized data points on who did what on what terms and how in 90 countries around the world. So really, it's something like a mini version of Bloomberg for infrastructure.
Great. And where are
And
you
I'm based in
based out of?
Washington, D.C. Yeah,
Awesome. And
I
how
started
long
this
have you
4.5 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. One quick thing, I just realized that we have, like, I know who you guys are on this panel, but I don't think the guests do. So if you want to, in time, put a little parentheses next to your name and the name of your company, that way they can take a look at you at their own time and pace. No rush on that. You'll get to it eventually. So I'm going to go to Aaron next.
Yeah,
Aaron's
howdy
fast.
everyone. Thanks for having me, Ginny, and the V4C team. Really exciting to be here. And welcome everyone. So my name is Aaron Fitzgerald. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mars Materials, and we are working to turn everyday products into carbon sinks. We're doing that by commercializing process technology that was developed at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL. It enables us to make a chemical feedstock called acrylonitrile, which is the sole raw material for carbon fiber, or polyacrylonitrile-based carbon fiber more specifically, and chemicals for wastewater treatment, purification, paper pulp manufacturing. We're based out of Houston, Texas, and I've been working on this project since July 2019. So approaching 5 years soon, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, Minh.
Hello, everyone. My name is Minh. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Heliotrope Photonics. At Heliotrope, we create an innovative coating that transforms the sunlight to make solar panels more efficient. So our coatings can be easily integrated into existing silicon solar manufacturing. It is low cost, and it is also non-toxic. So the technology is based on my PhD research at New York University. And at the end of my PhD, I decided to do a startup with my technology because I'm really, really into it. And I think that it can really make a powerful impact to the solar industry. So right now we are based in New York, Brooklyn, New York. And I think the startup has been official for about almost a year now.
Amazing. Awesome. So as you see, a wide range of founders on our panel today. And maybe I'll just kind of piggyback on something that Minh said, with your PhD, you built this company. So I'm going to take a little walk down memory lane for each of you. Talk to us about those beginning days, like how you moved from either your school PhD or your garage, so to speak, to creating a formal company. What help did you need or did you get along the way? And we'll start with Minh.
Okay, yes. So I think the technology is based on my PhD. So I didn't have a garage lab, but I start from a nice lab at NYU. I think the most difficult part for me in the beginning is like to have an entrepreneur mindset, because I was working in the lab, so I was thinking very conservative and I was thinking more like a scientist. I didn't think much about the application of the technology. So I participate in a few startup programs at NYU to learn how I should position myself as an entrepreneur, like how I should marketing my technology, how I should make a business roadmap for that. And then based on those like beginning workshops that I start learning more about the startup world, and then having mentors and finding partners to like take me further down.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Let's go to Kitty.
So I spent 15 years developing and financing infrastructure projects around the world. And frankly, my company was born out of frustration that I experienced when I said, why is it taking us 9 years to go and develop a single solar power project when you have a gold mine who's willing to go and buy all the power that we were going to go and generate? It still took 9 years. And I said, this is crazy. And I said, if we had data on how stuff had been done before, you could just replicate what worked instead. And so I said, well, the data we need is these agreements. And everybody told me, yeah, these agreements are all confidential. I said, really? Is that the case? Okay. Let me think about that. And I kept sort of digging and digging, and I found more and more agreements. And I said, I think I know where to find this information around the world. Around that time, I came into contact with people who were really experienced at natural language processing and the use of machine learning tools to analyze complex text data. And a woman who I'd known for over 30 years, we went to undergrad together, said, yeah, I use this to go and analyze NLP to analyze legal text every day. I said, Sylvia, I sort of started throwing some questions saying, could you extract this data or that data? And she said, yes, you could. And so there were two things that happened. I started saying, well, wait a minute, there's a big idea over here. And every time I'd go and talk to somebody who worked in infrastructure, like at a big bank or at a law firm, they said, "Oh, you can't find this information, and you can't use NLP to go and do this." And then I'd go talk to people like Sylvia and in Silicon Valley, and they're like, "You mean someone hasn't used technology to already solve this problem?" And so I said, "Wait a minute, like there's a huge arbitrage right here where if I can go find this information, I can go and analyze it. The tools are there." So I said, "Here's the opportunity." And then I frankly started driving my wife nuts because I was like, spending nights and weekends nonstop just thinking about this and moonlighting with this. And she said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. If doing this will make you happy and you'll stop driving me nuts, then go ahead and do it." So I think I'm very grateful for my family and their support. But to me, I also got support from my company. I was working for the International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank at that time. And they said, "Listen, we think this is a big idea. We'll give you a few months just to go work on this. At the end of it, if you want to leave, okay, you can leave. We don't want to see you go." But I think I had a very supportive employer at the time also who gave me time before I sort of took off to go do this by myself. That was 4.5 years ago.
That is such a nice employer. But I think they're also on the page that you're going to be doing something amazing and it's better for the world. So why not? Such a cool beginning story. Okay, let's move over to Aaron.
Yeah, sure. So Mars Materials is my third startup. First two were in software. I left the world of software wanting to move into climate and to scale my impact. And I joined a company called Kairos Aerospace. There I help grow the company and do some of our first we worked in leak detection for methane over oil and gas fields. And every day we detected methane. We're talking about super emitting methane gas leaks. And it was around that time I just started to develop the thesis for Mars, where we sit at the nexus of carbon dioxide removal and industrial decarbonization, knowing that without stopping extraction, we can't really solve the long-term problems that we have, but we also need to focus on drawdown. Ended up leaving that company and wanting to do more, wanting to figure out how we could kind of advance the stopping of extraction and where I could plug in. So I have an expertise in commercialization. I had some insights, and that's really where Mars was born. What I didn't have was the chemical engineering expertise that's required to bring process technologies like ours to life. So initially, it really started with me looking to find a technical co-founder, which I did in my co-founder, Christian Gupsch. And then he and I found the right support through programs like Venture for ClimateTech to help us figure out how to really set the foundation for what we hope will be a large chemical processing company that can replace the ones that we see and hear about in the news today.
I love the story about like your co-founder and you knew what you didn't have and what you needed, and you figured out how to find this person to complement your skill sets. I think one thing I didn't mention I think I did mention in our beginning is that V4C is for early stage startups. And so you may or may not have a co-founder at the time that you apply, and that's totally okay because that's how it all starts. But thanks for sharing your story, Aaron. And let's go down over to Alex.
Yeah, to wrap us up on these early stories, I'll share a little bit of my journey that helped me identify a problem area, and then a little bit of my co-founders who had a solution ultimately, and how we came together to start Cascade. But I've been excited about this industry of biomanufacturing, synthetic biology, for over a decade, since my own chemical engineering days. While I love the science, wasn't so much cut out for the lab work, so I went over to the business side. I was at a company for 4 years before Cascade called Zymergen, which you've probably never heard of, but it's a company that raised billions of dollars, IPO'd in April 2021, and then proceeded to completely collapse, losing 95% of its share value over the next year. And that just showed me how hard it is to try and move biology into these industrial settings to really disrupt a wide range of industries, from materials, chemicals, food, etc. And I'm like, we need to make biology cheaper and easier to use ultimately. And I started my own co-founder search, seeing what interesting technologies were being developed. And I luckily met my co-founder James, who was trying to commercialize his technology as a solo founder a year out of grad school. And it was just, we were very vision aligned. I knew the space. He had an incredible solution that we coined our body armor for enzymes. And the two of us came together and started off with, basically an empty warehouse that we then filled with a bunch of used lab equipment and started going off on the races.
That's so cool. Thank you. I'm going to keep us moving forward. I do definitely have some thoughts and questions along the way, but some of you have mentioned, coming out of labs and coming out of universities and such. So there's this thing called tech transfers. So I know at least one of you, or maybe even a few of you, have gone through that whole process. So maybe I'll start with Aaron. Can you share a little bit about that experience and any advice that you would have for somebody else who may be going through it now or in the future?
Yes, absolutely. So for, technical, if you're a founder looking to develop a technical company and you don't necessarily have the chemical engineering expertise and you're not necessarily an inventor, I think licensing technology is a really powerful way to solve a problem and create value in the ecosystem. So we ended up doing that with NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory based in Golden, Colorado. We were connected to them through a program called Lab Start, and the program gave us access to technology licensing officers at the lab and the inventors and the experts who we could talk to really give us the gut check on if this process technology could be as transformative as we were anticipating. I would say the process for licensing technology, be it with a national lab, a private company, or a higher ed institution, is tricky. Right, you're licensing people's babies effectively, and you're trying to make it your own baby. So think about how protective you might be there. But the advice that I could give is the same way you invest in your pitch deck for VCs. Your licensing officers want to be your friends. They want to know that they are giving their technology to someone who is going to stop at nothing to bring it to the market. And in order for you to really understand what their pinch points are, it requires you to kind of do that discovery and build that rapport. And I think that will unblock you and allow you to move forward in an accelerated pace.
I see a lot of head noddings here. Does anyone else want to jump in or piggyback?
So I sorry, Minh, were you going to say something? Because you're coming out of university, I'll wait for you. No, I was actually going to talk about the opposite, which is about IP separation, which is a lot of people will say, I have this really cool idea, and you'll sort of start working on something informally. And this particularly happens with people enrolled at universities, and different universities have different policies around what, the use of technology developed with their funding or on their premises. Employers do too. So if you are working on an idea while employed somewhere, read your policy manual, read your employment contract. Each one is different. Some of them say something like, anything developed over here using our money is ours. And part of the reason why I had to leave the World Bank Group was, there were very senior people there ready to say, listen, you're working on this game-changing idea. We want to go and fund it, and then you can spin it out. And it sounded great, but then I said, I think you should probably go talk with the Office of Ethics and Compliance. And they said, you can't do that. Anything developed on our premises is ours. We don't have a mechanism to be able to go and license stuff out, which is why I had to go and leave. So so be cognizant of the separation. The second thing is you want to go and engage a good IP lawyer sooner than you think. And you want you to have legal clarity is perhaps the most important thing, that one of the first things that an investor will check for. And this is the kind of thing that can come and bite you later on, where if you have not inked this with your co-founder, with the people or the organization that developed your IP, you could find yourself working on something for quite some time, only to have legal trouble later on, which makes your startup unviable or uninvestable.
Yeah, great. points here for people to make sure they consider as they go along. Unless Minh wants to jump in, I will move over to our next section of.
Maybe I just add
Okay.
one quick thing to what Aaron and Gary has been sharing. I think some university also public their IP IP terms. Like I know that Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh share that they like will license the technology for like 5 or 6% for the startup. So for us, we make a PowerPoint of the public deals from other universities. So then when NYU gave us the initial deal, it was not very friendly. And then through the presentation, we share that it is what other schools has been doing. It is more normalized, it is standards. And that's how we make our, like, that's how we get what we want. So maybe I just want to add that to what Aaron and Gary has been sharing.
Thank you. I'm gonna move. Oh, should I pause? Scott's on video. Did you have something?
Yeah, we had a question come in specifically for you, Aaron, and for everyone who's watching. I know I've been off camera, but program manager for Venture for ClimateTech, excited to be in the background, bringing your cues up for some A's. So Aaron, question for you. This is from FEMA. You mentioned that researchers work hard to guard their research/IP. How do you approach licensing officers and be taken seriously? It's been a challenge to gain the credibility when approaching universities and labs about their work.
Yeah, that's a great question, Fima, and thank you, Scott, for sharing it. And perhaps I misspoke there. I would say the researchers want their work to go out into the world and have impact, right? I think at least that's what we found. I think when you then move to the business conversations with the licensing officers, what you have to remember what their job is. In addition to extending licenses to potential licensees, they want to make sure they are giving that license to the organization or the person that has the potential to actually move the needle on getting the technology out into the world. So the best thing I could say you can do there is to, one, overcome their guard. So build rapport with them, understand what risks they are solving for in their job. But then also, come as correct as you can. So do your research, have a plan for how you want to commercialize the technology, be able to articulate why you're the right team, why you have the right set of initial expertise and experience to build a team that can also help to grow the technology. And I think you'll have some success there.
Thanks for the question, Fima, and thank you for the response, Aaron. I think the other thing about being in a accelerator, whether it's B4C or someone else, like you will have all of these other people who have gone through certain aspects of the journey that can talk you through how they've gone through it and what successes they've had or where their challenges are. And so one big sell of an accelerator is because you will have that network and everybody who's been there and done that before you. I want to move into a slightly different topic. I want to talk about building teams because that is such a big aspect of how you build a company. You can't do it alone, right? So I'd love to hear from you all and about like your critical hires as you went from maybe being by yourself or with a partner to like now having employees. And some of you had mentioned you found your co-founders, but it'd be really nice to know where you found them from because I think some folks on this call might be looking for co-founders as well. And then also maybe like as you were meeting all these folks, what were you considering when you were deciding to hire them? Because hiring for a startup might be very different than hiring for a corporate role with a specific, role or assignment. So let me maybe start with Minh.
Yeah, so when I first started Heliotrope, I actually studied with one of my friends in the lab. And then I was like, yeah, we work great together in the lab. I know him well. He has great work ethics, so we decided to do it together. But then it didn't turn out very well because then we have the same skill sets. Both of us have the lab background, and both of us think like a scientist instead of one of us think like an entrepreneur. So we didn't go that far. And then when my friend left the startup, then I was actually participating in V4C. And then I remember Jackie mentioned that Minh, we're gonna find you a co-founder. And that kind of ensured me. And then I met my CEO, Conrad, through a mutual friend at NYU. And when I met Conrad, we had a very straightforward discussions about where we are at Heliotrope. And then Conrad also told me what he wants. And I really like Conrad from the first meeting because he is very professional, he's straightforward, but he's also very committed to the climate tech. So he was a politician in Switzerland. He's been working with a lot of like green energy policies, and then he was leading a huge transportation company in Switzerland. So I think that Conrad has been an amazing partner, and I'm really happy that I found Conrad and met Conrad through a friend at NYU. So if I can say one thing about finding co-founder, I would say that you want someone who have like complementary skill sets instead of the same skill set. And Conrad was an MBA student at NYU, so he definitely like has the business perspective that I was not very like that I was not very skillful with. And yeah, so and then we hit it off with like the same mindset, the same working style. So it's just really easy. I met him once and then we decided to form the startup together like 2 weeks later.
What a great story. Alex, can you top that? I'm just kidding.
That's not a competition. You know, I was looking for a co-founder for about a year. And I feel like I was trying all these different avenues, whether using the YC co-founder matching platform, or here in New York, going to a wide range of different happy hours, some organized by ND Bio, et cetera. And eventually I talked to one investor who actually had just heard James pitch, and they're like, oh, like what he's building and trying to do sounds like what you're trying to do as well. You two should talk. This was May of 2022, and immediately I was like, okay, like he was like enzyme mobilization seems kind of niche. Let's hear about this technology. And then hearing him speak, hearing his technology and his passion for it, I was like, not only is this an incredible solution to a problem I haven't necessarily thought of before, but this seems like someone who's willing to like roll up his sleeves and get into the trenches. And that's how it's been really over the last year and a half. Actually, this last weekend he spent in the lab because it was so cold in Denver that he was worried about the pipes freezing and everything. So just keeping on the heatings, keeping the doors insulated and everything. So definitely, someone who's really going to be there in the trenches. And then, he was looking for a co-founder too, right? And he felt like if I could also be in the trenches with my industry experience and what I was hoping to do as well. And then now we're a 7-person team since then, which has been exciting to see. And our first hire was also from James's same lab. So someone that we knew how he worked, someone who knew and was excited about the technology we were building and was, knew what startups were like as well, to join us on the journey, on the roller coaster that we've been on.
That was a pretty good story. All right, let's go over to Aaron.
Yeah, echoing what other folks say, I think when you think about strategic team building at an early stage, that can feel a little overwhelming. You don't have long runways and you don't have a lot of time to find the right people to come in. But I do think it's really important, particularly as you're setting a foundation. We have an advisor who tends to say the first 20 hires are the ones that really set the culture for what your organization will become when it scales up to a massive firm. So today we're a team of 7. We are heavy on technology development. And really the guiding philosophy for myself has been to fire myself for what I can't do. I can't do chemical engineering, so that was the most obvious initial kind of way to multiply the company. So I brought in my co-founder, and I found him through a group called Air Miners. And then we are really committed to making sure that our community the team that we're building is one that's diverse and one that does not have a hive mind. So then really, following what Minh said and like trying to find people who don't just think like me, but can give us all different aspects of considerations when we're solving problems, because that allows us to look at the whole spectrum and allows us to consider all the variables that kind of go into it. And we're going to have some limitations because we're still all, a small group. But if we were to hire a bunch of people who thought like me, we'd be looking in kind of one small piece of the pie, and we'd really probably drive ourselves into a ditch. So being able to think more broadly, to have everyone question each other's assumptions is something that we take pride in when we are looking to expand our team.
Yeah, there's this concept called like social proof. So you don't want that. But what I've heard throughout at least 3 of you so far, there are some common threads. There's, your network is a great place to find people, but also really important to continue building. A commitment to what the company's actually doing is very important. And then complementary skills are also important. And I want to go to Giri, but I also have one other question for you, Giri. I know, and I believe you have the biggest team out of everyone here so far. And I'd love for you to also maybe talk a little bit about building culture as you scale and making sure that everything is still functional at that point. So take it away.
For that, you should ask my COO because she's the one who keeps the ship moving. So, well, I'll briefly talk about how I went through the process and maybe just offer a couple of watchwords. I'm very candid and share lessons learned all the time. So initially, I started out and was talking to somebody who said, I didn't know much about software development. I said, I have this idea, this problem that I think can be technically solved. So I had this data and I was running around with this data trying to find the person who would help me uncrack the data before I found Sylvia. And I met an engineer out in California, great person, did some experimentation. He said, listen, I think I want to stay with my company. I'm like, that's fine, no problem. And very quickly thereafter, I found Sylvia, who I'd known since undergrad. And she said, oh yeah, this is the kind of stuff I go and this is the kind of data I wrestle with all the time. And I've known her for 30 years. And so we basically sort of made this separation that he takes care of the core part of the engineering. And then I take care of commercial matters. I know product and commercial issues. After some time, we realized we need really a CTO to help her out because she didn't want to be dealing with DevOps and security and platform engineering. She wanted to just focus on the core part of our IP. So it turned out a distant uncle of mine who has been working in software for 40 years, not only invested in the company, but then gradually, organically started coming on board and helping us out and made it his priority to basically be, as he says, everyone's servant. So he says, I've been working in software for 40 years, but I am everyone's servant. He takes that very seriously. I will tell you that before that, we had a team, we had a few people who were sort of people who were one or two people who were highly accomplished. One was a very senior executive, a big infrastructure company. We're all on good terms right now, but there was sort of a down point before our CTO came on, where we're trying to go and struggle to scratch our funding together. And when you start to go and ink a cap table is when everything starts to blow up and people start getting upset and saying, I don't want to be a part of this anymore if this is what I'm going to get. I'm like, it's pretty generous, objectively. Go talk to people. And people started quitting. And I said, that's okay. As long as Sylvia and I are here, we have the core IP, the core product, the core data, and you got to have the fortitude to go and say, we're going to move forward. And we did. And that's when we got our CTO and other people who I've just known for a long time and have trusted for a long time started coming on board to help out. I got a call a year and a bit ago. Scott, of course, knows our COO, Sandy Thoyer. She and I were in business school together, and we were on the same learning team, so we knew we could work together. And she said, "Hey, I'm kind of looking for a job, so why don't you come help us out?" I said, "What will I do?" I said, "Everything," because the company's kind of falling apart. I can't manage the internal affairs of the company. I got to stay focused on clients and product and data. So she came on, and she really has helped sort of make us a well-run machine. I'll say 2 more things over here. Some of our best engineers are people who came on as interns. We worked with them for a month or 2 months and 3 months, and then we sort of had an opportunity to go and test drive them. And they're the people who just worked out phenomenally well because They are uncommonly dedicated to the company and our purpose over here, and they've just gotten promoted along the way. So they lead teams right now. So our interns who have come on and led teams, and I think you you talked about culture. I think we invest junior people with a lot of responsibility, and they take that very seriously. They work really hard, and they're committed to what we're doing. Everybody's incentivized, but they're really there because you're not there for the money in a startup. You're there because you believe in this idea and you believe that what you're doing really can go and change the world. When you're working on something 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you like the people around you and believe in what you're doing. So I think we try to create that kind of culture. We're inclusive. We are a bit more meeting heavy than a lot of other startups, where we want people aligned around what we're doing and thinking the same way. So I think people feel they know what's going on. They understand the purpose. They get to go and meet clients. I'll send junior people out to go meet Goldman Sachs unsupervised. No problem. I know it's going to be fine. I may give them a pointer to say, make sure you wear a blue or white collared shirt before you go meet the client, and they get that memo. But so I think you want to sort of set the guidelines and then say, we try to stay aligned around the purpose, and usually they bring back something which is far beyond what I imagine was possible. I'll say one last thing about founders, co-founders, early hires. For employees, make sure you have a probation period, 90-day probation period, 120-day probation period. Things don't work out, and you got to be ready to go and exit people along the way. Very important to have that exit period. With equity, absolutely essential to have 1-year cliff, 4-year vesting. Do not, if you're a founder, do not allow anyone else accelerated vesting, anything other than 1-year cliff, 4-year vesting, sometimes even 1-year cliff, 5-year vesting. Guys, things don't work out. Things don't work out with everyone. You've got to have this structured exit. No harm, no foul, nothing personal. You got to make tough decisions.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was actually going to say, I love the intern route too. I've had really great experiences with interns moving into full-time positions because you have that time with them to see whether or not they're committed, et cetera, that you need from them, right? But then also not everyone has the luxury of hiring an intern and waiting 90 days to see if they are a good employee or not. But they sign on, into an accelerator just off the bat and say, oh yeah, this is my co-founder, but you have no time working with them. That cliff is so standard. 1-year cliff, 4-year vesting schedule. It is extremely standard throughout the whole startup industry. So there shouldn't be any issues with that that you would come across. I see some head nods here. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I think I'm going to ask one more question to the group, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So this one is going to be about fundraising. Woo! Some of you have great experiences with it. Some of you may not. It varies for everyone. And I know some of you have been raising kind of like a pre-seed round versus like Series A round. And I think, Alex, you just closed your A round, right? So lots of variety here for you to hear from. So let's talk a little bit about what have been some of your key learnings in the fundraising process, especially for a climate tech startup. And also if you've used any sort of alternative funding resources, such as grants or loans. Like I know, Aaron, you are a Breakthrough Energy Fellow. Tell us a little bit more about where you're getting your investments from and what avenues you've approached. Oh, I need to say who starts. Let's start with Alex.
Yeah, happy to start. And while we're still a bit away from our Series A, we did close our pre-seed last year, raising $2.6 million in a tricky environment. And as a first-time founder, I learned a ton about the fundraising process. I was wrong a year ago, actually, about a number of things, right? Like one, how many people I need to talk to. I was talking to 10 to 15 folks. They seemed pretty warm, and I was like, all right, I'll start this fundraising. This will be easy. Really, I should have been talking to 100, 150, if not more, even for my niche area of biomanufacturing. The second thing is I talked to people who raised, not when I was raising. So I like got some of the numbers on like what, amount I should try and go out and raise, and the valuation we should go try and target based on where we're at as a company. And I was talking to people who raised like early 2022, right? Very different environment from early 2023. So with that first 2 months, quickly got humbled, halved what we were asking for, halved what we were looking to value the company at. And luckily we were nimble enough and to do that. And that, usually is not a great sign for the broader market, but we were able to move past that. And I also think, I shouldn't be looking what other people similar to us are raising. I need to sit down and like, okay, what do we need to hit these big milestones that'll create an inflection point of value, right? Whether that's customer deliveries or, proving out the business model or de-risking the technology. And what is it going to take to do that, and add some buffer, of course, and give yourself, sufficient time, especially in a slower market. We wanted to have at least 2 years runway. And that's really how I should have navigated kind of what we needed to raise, et cetera. So lots of mistakes I ultimately made during that process, or hearing over 100 no's, but eventually getting to that one yes, building momentum around that, and then ultimately turning that into 7 yeses. And how we did that was actually, we heard yes from the first person like mid-April. And then by end of May, we only had one other yes. We still had half the round to fill. And we sat down with our leads and they're like, hey, we really believe in you guys. Whether you fill the whole round or do a smaller round, we'll be able to make something work out. Let's just, wrap this process up, because that's the big indicator to the rest of the community. So basically for everyone who's considering us at that time, we drew a line in the sand, a deadline, 2 weeks from there. And that helped push, 5 people, even one team we met, 2 days before they gave us a yes. So really that use of momentum strategically helped us get to the finish line of this first round. And I think it's one of the tools that I'll leverage much more significantly the second time I go out to fundraise.
Thank you. Let's go to Minh.
Yep, so right now we are actively raising our pre-seed round, and I totally agree with Alex that we need to talk to like a lot of people. Like you think that you talk to 10 or 15 people and they say they're really interested in this solar coding, but then it can be like we make it to the final round and they say no. So it's like you have to talk to as many people as you want. And especially if you have a warm intro, that helps with a long way. Like we work with a lot of mentors and our mentors have a great network of with angel investors and with climate VC. So it definitely helps us. And also for solar startup, we got some grants from Department of Energy and NSF. So I think like there's some grants from the government available for like early stage climate startup. And then maybe the last thing I've learned throughout this process is also that the solar industry in the US has not been very great so far. People still have trauma from solar companies went bankrupt like 10 years ago. So we realized that America is not very welcoming the new solar startups. So with our international background, me from Vietnam and Conrad from Switzerland, we also look into international VC. We like, yeah, maybe in this side of the world, people are not that interested, but we are sure that people in Singapore or Europe, there would be like VC interested. So we also extend our scope and talking to people from other countries as well, especially, like solar energy is available everywhere in the world.
It's really funny because we teach everybody to do customer discovery, but this is like investor discovery as well. Aaron, how has your investment fundraising journey been?
Yeah, Jenny, that was actually my first point is we talk about customer discovery, but we forget at this early stage when investors and grantors are subsidizing your work, they're your customers, right? Whenever you get a grant, those milestone reports you need to submit, right? That's their proof that you've built what they're asking you to and what they're funding you to build. When investor updates are also proof that you're deploying cash the way your investors are, believing in you to do to reach that eventual value return. So I think it's really important to, start conversations in that way, be able to poll VCs and really understand who your buyers are of your company, understand what drives them, why they care and why they're spending the time with you, and really try to show and prove that way. I also think it's important that we remember as founders that fundraising is a process. It has at scale, if you're a publicly traded company, you have huge investor relations teams, selling equity, managing investors. And if you really think about the smallest scale version of it at a startup, is you and your co-founders that are managing that whole process. But it is a process. You can create structure around it. You can make it more manageable so that you can talk to 100, 200 investors until you find that right fit. And I think, as Alex and Minh really alluded to, don't get discouraged with the number of conversations you need to have. Look at it as an opportunity. Those 99 folks who have passed on you may come back in future rounds, and you don't know who they know. I think the last time I checked one of those kind of public lists of investors, there was like 1,500 in climate tech, right? That is just overwhelming in and of itself, but also gives you hopefully hope for opportunity. And then I also think in terms of climate, right? You don't have to follow a traditional path when you're talking about receiving funds. Diversify your capitalization stack. We are heavily reliant on subsidy monies from grantors, from investors. And we really invest equal amount of time meeting the program directors for grantors as we do for VCs. Being able to really have a streamlined kind of process for both of those enables us to hedge against market downfalls as we're kind of in right now.
Thanks for sharing. I wanted to kind of double down on some things that you guys said. So even if you get a pass on an investor, like add them to your monthly newsletter, because you might not have been right for them at that stage or at that traction, but when you get further along, they'll start getting interested. And the more you kind of are front of mind to them, the easier your next conversations will become. And the other thing, I think Minh kind of made me remember this, is like the conversations will happen, you get warm intros, you might even get to the final step. And even if they say yes, until it hits the bank, it is not a yes. You could sign the papers, but until it hits the bank, it's not a yes. So just a couple of things to remember here. So I am going to maybe move this over now to our guests today and see if there are any questions. I know that it takes some time for you to like type these questions up, so we will roll with the ones that we've got, but please feel free to continue adding to them. And Scott's back on video, so I guess we're ready to
Yeah.
say some cues.
There's a Chris, maybe we popcorn back and forth.
Yeah.
That work for you? Great. I'll go ahead and ask one from Shan. How significant do you feel it is to be categorized as a climate startup as opposed to just a startup? How does the climate category help you, if at all?
I'm happy to start here. For me, it's mission and motivation. I think there are thousands of problems you can solve, and there's a lot of ways I could spend my time. And now learning that I could, now since I know that I can, teach myself chemical engineering and build teams around this, I think I could be successful in other industries. But where do I really want to spend my life energy and my passion? And it's climate. So I think that is what focuses me, and it focuses my team. And we're a public benefit corporation, so it also guides our decision making.
I think
Seriously?
I'll just say one thing about that, which is a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you could sort of call yourself a climate startup and paint yourself with a broad brush and perhaps get away with um, perhaps what some more sophisticated climate investors would look at and say, that's not really much of an impact. I think that the market's matured very quickly. And I think both on the fund side and company side, and well, company side, employee side, and fund side, employees or potential employees are more adept at asking questions about what your real impact is and whether you're committed to that. On the limited partner side, I've certainly seen some climate tech funds right now go out of business or not able to raise that second fund because I think there's a flight to knowledge where investors are now focused on the more the VCs who really understand the industry dynamics, understand what impact they can realistically make. I think that if you intend to classify yourself as a climate tech startup, that has to be authentic and backed up by industrial logic. Maybe not the numbers, what is our GHG impact going to be? I could run some numbers. We've run some numbers on that stuff. But I think it's more about authentically being able to say, here's how we make a difference. And knowing that and believing that and articulating that with passion and authenticity and conviction is far more important.
Oh, maybe I can answer next. So I think for me, when I first started my PhD, I always want to work in a technology that, like a climate technology that can have an impact in the world. So it's just not like something theoretical, but something more practical. And then when I found Heliotrope, a climate startup, I think the advantage is it is very easy to explain it to the people. Like people understand what we're trying to do. People immediately like what we're doing with the climate, that we are trying to harvest more solar energy. And I think with the climate startup, it's also easier to get people interested. And I think that's how I got Conrad. When I met Conrad, he immediately told me that he wants to work in climate tech. He wants to work with something that's more sustainable, something more unique. And then I told him that I'm working with this hard tech that can drive the solar industry a decade ahead. So Conrad is really interested in that, and that's why I got him on board. So I think like the climate startup is definitely getting more attention right now. And people also pay more attention to the environment. So that definitely helps us with the fundraising and with the grants in general.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add on, because we're in an interesting intersection, right? Are we a climate tech startup? Are we a biotech startup? Are we a deep tech company? Like, there's so many different avenues, right? And what I do is I keep the messaging internally the same, right? We're trying to clean up the chemicals industry, greener processes with enzymes. But externally, there's a wide range of different audiences that we can cater to, wide range of investors, customers, et cetera. And position ourselves as a climate tech for a certain set of VCs that are now seeing a lot of funding from their own LPs, given a focus on climate. Like, we use that in those conversations. But there's a number of biotech investors too interested in our space. So it is, at least externally, one tool in the toolbox. But as Aaron was highlighting at the start, it's like very important internally to know who we are, know what's motivating us, know what's focusing on us. And I think climate, even though we don't call it out specifically, is a key part of our mission.
Cool. Thank you guys for answering that. I'm going to jump in with the next question, which actually is specifically for Giridhar. It's from Wes Chung, and it says, if I'm correct, are you the biggest fintech SaaS company in infrastructure investments, or is it just green infrastructure? Are you dominating your niche?
I'd love to say I'm dominating my niche.
It was a flattering question.
We have an ambition to go and just create a great product over here. And so look, I'll just, I don't know about size. What we do is, I think we've hit upon a problem that is ubiquitous, which is just a lack of data across infrastructure, whether it's power, renewables, water, ports, transport. Everything is project financed. And we basically are we have the data platform, built out the data platform to be able to go and make all of those infrastructure sub-asset classes just work more efficiently, develop projects faster and cheaper, finance things more easily, procure for cheaper. Just in terms of numbers, we've raised 5.8 million so far in a seed round, which is a ways away from much more than we'd raised at the time when we started out with V4C. So kudos to V4C because they helped us along that journey. So we are across infrastructure. I think we really are the only infrastructure data company that I know of that's out there. There are people sort of trying to do some other stuff with sort of software to make the workflows more efficient, but we're really the only ones in this space. I think we're starting to get a name and be known for having the data that can really, the standardized data that people have been looking for. So yeah, we're I'll say I wanted to just say, if I could, one thing about the fundraising process, Jenny. If that could be helpful, I'll just say a couple things that one is, I think fundraising is more of a binary outcome. You either have the money or you don't have the money. It's kind of like the fuel in the car. You either have the fuel or you don't have the fuel. Either the car goes or it doesn't go. So it's don't get too fussed about valuation and all that stuff at the early stages. You always think your company should be worth a lot more than what someone else thinks it says. It's your baby, and don't get too fussed about that. If it works out, it's going to work out just fine. Don't worry. Second is, people say, "Oh, don't take money from strategics." That's just false, especially in the climate tech space right now. There's a lot of energy companies and others who are, and biology companies and pharma companies and chemical companies who are trying to go with their corporate venture capital arms and to go and put money into this space and keep abreast of new technologies. Absolutely. You should consider them. Don't listen to this VC conventional wisdom where they tell you, oh no, you need a neutral VC. That's nonsense. Our second biggest investor is a Spanish renewable energy developer. So look, it's a tough journey. You need to be resilient and be ready to take no very often. But I will tell you that people who invest in your company will be the people who basically, within the first 7 minutes of you speak with them, are going crazy with you and are just as passionate. It's more of a binary outcome. You have the money or don't have the money. Either your investor is passionate about you and your team and your idea, or they're not. If they ask you too many like business school questions, like, and I went to work, if they ask you too many business school questions, like, how many gas stations will this replace? Or how many, like, if they start asking you those kinds of like silly math questions, they are pure financial investors who may not fully align with the purpose and passion and product.
Thank
Just
you
my
for
view.
sharing. Yeah, I mean, there's the concept of smart money and dumb money. So I think you
I didn't say that.
summarized. I said, but I think you summarized it really well. So careful who you put on your cap table, because it is a marriage just the same as who's your co-founder. That is a marriage for a very long time. It is exactly at the hour mark, so I'm going to close this out. Panelists, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You guys were all so great. And to our guests, I hope you found some use out of this webinar for yourself as well. And we will be sending a quick survey out at the end just to make sure that this was helpful to you and if there's any questions that you might have that we can answer. But if you are working in climate right now, to keep doing this important work. We really, really need more climate founders here to solve our climate crisis. But one more time, our applications are open. They will close on March 3rd. The link is in the chat now. And if you have questions, there's an email here called info@forclimatetech.org. So you can also email us as well. But with that, I will close this out. And everyone, thank you for your time and have a great day or night wherever you are.